American Timelines is a member of the Queen City Podcast Network. Find out more at queencitypodcastnetwork.com.
So now I'm obsessed with time. Come on, tell me about the time. Had it all in my hand tonight. Had the time of my life. When the words all come down like blues on Tuesdays come down. Throw it all away. Throw it all
I'll give you a deep dive.
I'm going to talk about the murder of Mia Zapata, who was a lead singer for the Seattle punk band The Gits.
Mia Zapata.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll give you a deep dive.
Never heard of
So
this.
Mia Zapata was born August 25th, 1965 in Louisville, Kentucky. And from being a child, she was real into music. She could play the guitar and the piano by the time she was 9. She was influenced by punk rock and jazz and blues. And she had a real, amazing voice. And then in 1984, she enrolled in Antioch College.
This is a punk singer?
Yeah.
She
But-
had a real good voice.
But
huh?
she did, yeah. In 1984, she enrolled at Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio.
Oh, I've
as
never heard of that. And I'm
liberal
from Ohio.
arts student.
She's from Louisville, Kentucky originally.
Yes, she
And
was
then
born
she went
there.
to college in Ohio.
That's right. In September 1986,
Yeah.
she and 3 friends formed a punk rock band, The Gits.
1986 was the year that Ron Simmons made his debut in wrestling. So that's when the Gits were.
That was the same time. And in 1989, the band relocated to Seattle because that was the big rock scene.
Relocated from where? They formed in Ohio?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and they relocated to Seattle in 1989.
That's right. And so she
Interesting.
got a job at a local bar, and they all moved into an abandoned house, and they called it the Rat House.
Who else was in the band? Does it say? Is it women? All women?
No, she's the only woman.
Oh, okay. She's the only lady in the band.
Yes.
She and her bandmates moved to Seattle. She got a job at a
Yeah.
bar. Gotcha.
So they released a series of real well-received singles on independent record labels from 1990 to 1991.
The Gits?
The Gits.
Have you heard of them before this?
I had not heard. No,
Okay.
I had not heard of.
I just
them
want to make
before this.
sure. Am I the only idiot?
No.
But I feel like the
Well,
name
they
sounds
were.
familiar.
Yeah, I do too.
But I don't think I can name any songs.
I mean, I listened to it after.
You did?
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's good.
Really?
Yeah.
Like you would download it right now and pay for it?
I think it'd be interesting to see what Audrey would think about it.
Oh.
You know.
Let's see what Audrey thinks about the Gits. Audrey Rose?
Hello?
I just made you watch a couple videos of the Gits. What is your initial reaction to the Gits?
Punk rock, yeah.
So you know that it was punk rock?
Yeah.
How do you know it was punk rock?
Because like the beat and like the drums is good.
And it was real loud.
Yeah, it's like.
Have you ever heard punk rock before?
Yes.
When?
In this show called Best Friends Whenever.
There's a show called what?
Best Friends Whenever.
What is that on Netflix?
Yes, I already finished the season. It's about these 2 best friends, and they time travel. And it's really fun because they went back to like the 50s or like the 70s. I don't remember. But like, and they traveled there, and like Sid was a tomboy and Shelby was like the girly girl. So Sid went with the punk rock people and Shelby went with the disco people. So then I got to hear the punk rock people.
And this was in the 50s?
Or like 70s. Like, I don't really remember.
Okay, so punk rock, what did the punk rock people look like in this show?
They had like weird hair. This guy had orange hair, and they had like spikes coming up with his hair like out of everywhere.
Okay.
They had like mohawks and like crazy hair.
Okay, that's pretty punk rock. So what was better, the band in that TV show or the Gits?
Fan of the TV show.
What did you think about the lead singer of the Gits? Did you think she was pretty?
I thought he was a boy.
No, it was a girl lead singing.
Yeah, she was pretty.
Even though you thought it was a boy?
Yes.
All right, that was Audrey's reaction to listening to the Gits. Okay, so as they were making a name for themselves in the local music scene, they often played shows with their friend's band, which was called 7 Year Bitch.
Oh, I've heard of that. The 7 Year Bitch?
You've heard of that?
I feel like this all sounds familiar.
So in 92, they released their debut album called Frenching the Bully. And then
Frenching the bully.
their reputation was increasing when the grunge scene really was starting to hit Seattle.
Okay.
She came from an affluent family, but she often lived without material comforts. As her father described it, Mia lived in two different worlds. She lived on two different sides of the street. The straight side on one with parochial schools and affluent family and tennis clubs. When she crossed the streets, material things didn't mean anything to her. And her music often led to a rejection of financial comfort. She was
Kind of like Vanilla Ice.
stop.
What?
She was this great person. She was really a good friend.
Oh, really?
She was a little shy, but she helped her. She would help people kick drugs. She did. Yeah, she was a real dynamic performer. Like the other band members would say that they would get off the stage and the people in the audience didn't even know they had been in the band because she was so magnetic.
This is going to sound weird, but that's exactly what I feel about Matt Truman. The Matt
yeah.
Truman ego trip. Like it's not just he's got a whole band.
Yeah.
But he is like a rock star in a band. Like he's got feather boas and like white
He's like Elton John up there.
He's like Elton John. He's just like it's a party fun atmosphere. So I bet she was like that.
So she was really well connected to her community. She was the hub of a lot of social circles. She drew all sorts of people together who otherwise might never have met. The band, which included guitarist Joe Spleen, drummer Steve Moriarty, and bassist Matt Dresdner, met in Ohio in
Did you
1986.
say Joe Spleen?
Yeah.
Spleen. The guy's name is Joe Spleen?
I think that was a stage name.
God, that's
I
a
want to
great
say that
name.
was a stage
Joe
name.
Spleen.
Um,
I looked that guy up.
So, within no time, the band had developed quite a following amidst the city's underground punk scene. Many would group them together with bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam, but Mia brought a voice of femininity to the grunge scene that had not been seen yet. Although the group was 75% men, the band as a whole and Mia Zapata in particular gained quite a following among the feminist community in Seattle at the time.
Okay. I like feminists.
In 1990, after
Spleen,
moving to
y'all.
Seattle, they went on to a very successful international tour. I want to say that Beck even opened for them. I think I read that
You want to
somewhere.
say it?
Yeah, I think I read
Let's
that
see.
Beck opened for them.
I'll just look it up.
So, and they didn't have a record label, so they were doing all of this without a record label. Throughout the recording of the second album, the band had planned a large U.S. and European tour as well as many local shows.
Unknown homeless hippie kid named Beck opened the show,
See, I was right.
followed by a mariachi band and a quinceanera.
Yep. So they
Finally,
were
the
being
Gits took the
courted by various
Right.
recording labels, but unfortunately, before the group could finish and record their second album, which was called Enter the Conquering Chicken,
Yeah.
the band was shocked by the murder of their iconic lead singer.
Mia Zapata?
Yeah.
She was murdered?
She was murdered.
Like,
So,
you bring her up and I get all excited. I've never
Yeah,
heard of
she's
her, and now
murdered.
she's dead.
so here's the deal.
Joe Spleen did it.
Here's the deal.
No, it's done. Joe Spleen did it.
So at around 2:00 a.m. on July 7th, 1993,
yeah.
do you want to fill us in on
July-
what was happening?
Well,
July
it's funny you
7th,
should say that because
1993.
It's funny you should say that because it was 2 a.m. So that was really July 6th, 1993. That evening, it was like late in the evening, was 2 a.m. So
Well, it was
earlier,
July 7th, but
well,
it was
that's when this happened. But
Yeah.
earlier in the evening before,
Yeah.
before it became the morning,
Yes.
it was July 6th, which was a Tuesday, and just a few days before that, some groundbreaking things happened on that 4th of July, and we're only 2 days after. An unbelievable thing in the WWF was they had an event.
Jesus Christ.
They had a wrestling event on the USS Intrepid, was a big
Oh my
aircraft
God,
carrier.
yes.
They did a wrestling event on the aircraft carrier, and the whole event was a contest to see if anybody could slam Yokozuna. Yokozuna was a big fat sumo wrestler guy.
Oh my God.
And nobody could pick him up and slam him. They had all kinds of athletes trying to. They had Lee Rousson, a former New York Giants running back, Bob Backlund, Peter Taglianetti from the Pittsburgh Penguins, a hockey player, Scott Burrell, the Charlotte Hornets. Charlotte.
Yeah.
Shout out to Charlotte. Whoop! Scott Steiner, Tatanka, Bill Fralick of the Detroit Lions, Crush, and Macho Man Randy
So all
Savage
those
all
people-
tried to body slam. This guy, the sumo wrestler, just stood in the ring.
And they all just like threw their bodies at him?
Now, he was a pro wrestler, but his gimmick was that
Right,
he
he was a
fat
sumo wrestler.
Japanese guy.
Yeah.
And so he was a sumo guy, but they all couldn't lift him. They all just couldn't lift him. But
Jeez.
then on this aircraft carrier, here comes a helicopter flying in on 4th of July. And the
And
helicopter.
you probably watched this.
I watched it, of course. The helicopter came flying in, and Lex Luger, who they were trying to make their American hero after
Yes.
Hulk Hogan,
Yeah.
they were trying to make him the big hero. He gets off this helicopter, and he's wearing super tight jeans with no belt and an American flag shirt. And
Jeez.
he rips off the shirt, and of course, he body slams Yokozuna.
Did he get flack
but
for
in the
ripping
middle-
the American flag shirt?
No, he didn't rip it. He just took it off. But
Oh.
I think in the middle of all that, Yokozuna took a break while people were trying to slam him, and he ate a bowl of rice. Lex Luger body slammed him. And then on television that night, before this tragic event happened, before poor Mia Zapata might have been home watching. She might have been watching Rescue 911 on CBS. Or a movie, A Triumph of the Heart, the Ricky Bell story, or if she switched to ABC, she might have watched reruns of Full House, Hanging with Mr. Cooper, Roseanne, Room for Two, and Jack's Place. Do you remember Room for Two?
No.
A sitcom with Linda Lavin and
Nope.
and Marsha Heaton.
I do not remember that.
Linda Lavin's the greatest thing that's ever happened.
Yeah,
to
I
me.
know Linda Lavin
Anyway,
is, but
so those were the things on TV. The number one song was Weak.
Weak.
Do you know who sings Weak?
Oh, is it Belinda Carlisle?
No. SWV, the greatest.
Oh, okay.
I get so weak in the knees, I can
Okay.
hardly speak.
Oh, okay.
I lose all control.
Alrighty.
And something take over me. Janet Jackson, That's the Way Love Goes.
Yes.
That's the way love goes. Tag team. Whoop, there it is.
Oh, yeah.
Whoop, there it is. UB40. I can't help falling in love
Oh, right. That's right.
with Drew. H-Town, Knockin' to Boots.
Jeez.
Robin S. Show Me Love.
I can guarantee you Mia Zapata wasn't listening to any of
You weren't listening to the popular stuff?
Mia Zapata wasn't.
Oh, Mia Zapata wasn't.
I
was like,
guarantee you she
I'm sure
wasn't.
you were at Purple Crackle.
Yeah, I was.
Dr. Dre, Dre Day. Dun, 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 yeah. Dun,
All
dun,
right,
dun.
move on.
Expose, I'll Never Get Over You, Getting Over Me.
I'll give you a deep dive.
At around 2 o'clock a.m. on July 7th, 1993, she left the Comet Tavern in the Capitol Hill area of Seattle, which was a place she liked to go.
Oh.
And she stayed at a studio space in the basement of an apartment building that was located a block away from there. And she stopped and visited a friend who lived on the second floor briefly.
Okay.
And that was the last time she was seen alive. She may have walked a few blocks west or north to another friend's apartment, or may have decided to take the long walk south to her home.
Why does this sound familiar?
There was a forensic files about this, but we didn't watch it.
I think we did.
A man at about 3 o'clock a.m., a man about 2 blocks from the Comet Tavern heard a scream around 3 o'clock a.m., and then a woman discovered her body in the street at around 3:30 a.m. near the intersection of 24th Avenue South and South Washington Street in the Central District. The woman ran to the fire department, which was really close by, to report it, and then they come and
This is at 3 in the morning?
yeah, and her body is still warm. And then the police arrive. They note that her body is laid out. Her arms are outstretched, and her legs are straight down, crossed over each other, kind of like a crucifix position.
Huh.
She's wearing a hoodie, which was pulled over her face, and then one of the strings was tied around her neck and strangled her. It didn't appear that she was attacked and killed at that scene. There was no blood at the scene or anything. She had no ID on her, so at first they didn't know who she was, but the medical examiner was a fan of the Gits and had been to their concerts, and he
You think he was like,
recognized her.
oh my God, this is the best
He's probably
exam I've
shocked.
ever done.
So according to him, if she had not been strangled, she would have died from the internal injuries suffered from the beating. According to court documents, an autopsy found evidence of a struggle in which Zapata suffered blunt impact to her abdomen and a lacerated liver. They looked at her boyfriend, who was, I guess he was kind of a scary guy. Not a lot of people liked him, but he was super cooperative. He went in whenever took 2 lie detector tests. He went in.
The boyfriends are always creepy guys.
And he helped the police. He had a really solid alibi. They investigated her friends and family. She was also raped. That was the other part of it.
Oh.
But
they always are.
Yeah.
That's why I had to stop watching that show. Every single woman is raped all the time.
But they didn't want to. The police didn't want to release all the information. They didn't release that she was raped.
They
She also
want
had
suspects to know that stuff, and then they know they did. Oh, you have information the public doesn't know.
And also she had bite marks on her chest. And they couldn't do impressions, like, you know how they can do impressions and get dental, but they couldn't do that. But there was trace amounts of DNA from saliva, and they had enough forethought to collect that, even though at the time there wasn't any technology.
Saliva couldn't.
There was, but it wasn't.
So has it since
good enough
been?
because it was.
Have they?
Well, just wait.
Oh
just
gosh,
wait.
I can't wait.
So there were scuff marks on her shoes and belt, indicating she may have been dragged. And, that kind of helps to figure out how many assailants there were, because at first the way she was laid out, it makes you think, was there 2 people, one carrying her arms and one carrying her feet?
Right.
But the scuff marks would indicate if she's dragged, then it's going to be one person probably. And there's no eyewitnesses. which furthers the theory that the attack didn't happen there because it was not super busy, but it was kind of a busy
bar
area.
Or the area around the bar.
Yeah.
But it's still at 2:30 in the morning, right?
Yeah. So,
God, if she just stayed home and watched Full House.
I know. So there's not. They don't have a lot to go on. There's no witnesses. And there's just a little bit of evidence. The Seattle music community, including Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and Soundgarden.
Those are 3 awesome bands. If you haven't
Yes.
heard them,
They helped raise $70,000
Really?
to hire a private investigator for 3 years.
Back in '93.
Yes, they did
that?
benefit concerts.
They did a benefit concert.
Yes, they did a bunch of them. Yeah,
$70,000.
yes, and
What?
they hired a private investigator for 3 years.
God, imagine if you could say you were at those concerts.
I know.
People can.
I know,
Went to those.
but the
And now, tragically, Chris Cornell's dead, and
Yep.
the Nirvana guy's dead.
Nirvana guy,
I got
Kurt Cobain.
Kurt Cobain.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just me being an idiot. I forget common things. Like the
I
other day,
know.
I was trying to work on the computer. I forgot what the word control panel was.
Yep.
Sorry.
All right. So but then the funds dried up without any major breaks in the case.
All that money?
But the investigator was named Lee Heron, and she continued to investigate on her own time even after that. But then in 1998, after 5 years of investigation, Seattle police said, we're no closer to solving the case than we were right after the murder.
Do you think Lee Heron was a big Gets fan? That's why she kept studying it?
I don't know. It could be. But then in 2003, I
like to say '03.
they started to, like, the technology started to improve, and they put the DNA. One of the other problems with the DNA was there was such a small amount
Yeah.
that in 1993 they knew that if they tried to test it and they goofed it up and made a mistake, it would be gone.
Yeah.
So they didn't want to risk
Let's
it.
wait until
which
the
was
future.
a good call. That was a
Yeah.
good call by police, not to try it and then they would never know. So they saved it.
We'll wait till far into the future when the guy's already dead.
And then in 2003 they put it through CODIS, which is the
CODIS.
Yes, that's the database, DNA database.
Of all those creeps, they get all the
Yes.
DNA.
And they actually
scumbag.
they put it in 2001, I think it was, but it didn't take. There was no hits.
Ought one.
But then in 2003, there
Ought
was a
three.
hit. It was a Florida fisherman named Jesus Mezquia, and he had come from Cuba in 1980. The DNA evidence was used to tie him to the murder. A DNA profile was extracted from the saliva found on her body and kept in cold storage. And the technology was called STR technology. The investigators had to go to Florida, locate this guy, Jesus Mezquia, and question him. And they get there and he's gone.
Oh.
But his wife,
He lived in Florida? He
Yeah.
was all the way in Florida, like
Yeah.
across the whole country.
I mean, this is 2003.
Yeah, that's true. '03.
But but his wife, he gets there and he's gone, but his wife gives him all the information they need. Like, she's like, oh, because
she's probably-
because the reason they had his DNA, because he was arrested in Florida for burglary and domestic abuse in 2002.
He was beating the
So
heck out of his
yeah,
mother.
so she was probably
Poor
like,
woman.
yeah, go get him.
Get that son of a
So-
bitch.
They spot his vehicle a few days later in Miami, and they interview him.
Does it say what kind of vehicle?
No. But they interview him, and he denies ever being in Seattle at all or murdering anyone. And then they show him a photo lineup of 10 murdered girls, and he says no, he doesn't know any of them. He hasn't seen any of them, which is a trap
Right.
because the saliva's on her. So
Yeah.
if he would have said he knew her, at least he could have said, oh, we got together, or
Right.
we,
He could have said, "Oh yeah, we made out." And then
right,
oh
right.
yeah, whatever.
But he says
I don't know her at
no,
all.
he doesn't know her and all that. He has a history of violence towards women, including domestic abuse, burglary, assault, and battery. All his ex-girlfriends and his wife had filed reports against him.
All of them.
There was also a report of indecent exposure on file against him in Seattle
Great. People
within
gotta see
2
his-
weeks of Zapata's murder. So
We got to see his balls.
yes,
close to
and
the-
it was close by. It was nearby the area she was murdered, but there was no other prior link between Mezquia and Zapata. He had lived about 3 blocks from where she was dumped, though.
He lived right by there, and he got his balls out sometimes.
Okay, he never.
Right? Because he was indecent exposure.
Yes, right.
Or was he just peeing?
I don't know. So he never testified in his own defense. He still maintains his innocence. The theory that they have is that he saw her leave the bar and he followed her a short distance before he attacked. She was listening to music and she had headphones
On
on.
a Walkman.
And it covered her ears, so she would have been unaware of any danger
Yeah, Walkmans were so
until he
big then.
grabbed her and dragged her to his car, where he assaulted her in the back seat. He was convicted in 2004 and initially sentenced to 37 years, which he appealed, and then he was then sentenced to 36 years, which I don't think is a very long prison term for murder. Personally, 36 years.
Well,
I mean,
Is it? Do you think it?
people usually get life for murder,
No,
but
he didn't.
he's been in prison since January 2003.
Anybody who rapes should get have their dick cut off.
In the aftermath of her murder, friends created a self-defense group called Home Alive, which disbanded in 2010, and they organized benefit concerts and released albums with the participation of Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Heart,
Alice in Chains.
Presidents of the United States of America. Remember them?
A lump.
Yep.
Lump.
Joan
She's in
and
my
Joan
head.
Jett also recorded an
Millions of
album
peaches,
with the
peaches for free. Millions.
That's
of
enough. Joan Jett also recorded an album with the surviving members of the Gits called Evil Stig, which is Gits live backwards.
Joan Jett rules.
In 2005, there was a documentary, The Gits Movie, which was produced about Mia Zapata's life, the Gits, and the Seattle music scene.
Also, Zapata means shoe in Spanish.
Viva Zapata by punk band 7 Year Bitch was released in June 1994 as a tribute to her. And then some of the songs on that album address the issue of her murder directly. Following her death, Joan Jett and Kathleen Hanna wrote a song called Go Home.
Kathleen Hanna is married to Ad Rock of the Beastie Boys.
Oh, wow.
She's from Bikini Kill. Boom. You didn't know
that's
that.
good.
Boom, dropping knowledge.
So,
like Galileo dropped the orange.
Her death caused a sense of defeat and fear within the Seattle community. The Seattle Times marked Zapata's murder as the moment the Seattle scene lost its sense of invincibility. Kristen Storm recalls Zapata's death as a reality check, stating, "They were all very tough people, and as a group of women, they're all really strong, outspoken, and hard-hitting, very opinionated women, and that perception of we're not victims at all in any way, and this can't happen to women that aren't victims." And I think Zapata's death shattered that myth for us and showed that it happens to all types of women. Her death is cast often as a symbol for feminist activism. But Dresdner, one of the bandmates, said that it was like she was sainted, and that was very peculiar. She became this icon that had very little to do with her actual life.
What did Joe Spleen have to say about it?
Oh, his real name was Andrew Kessler. The
Joe Spleen?
Yes.
His name isn't even Joe?
No, it's Andrew Kessler.
Screw Andrew Kessler. You can't just use the name Joe Spleen all willy-nilly.
He said Mia had no social or political agenda and no real interest in that stuff. Yeah. Also, after her death, she quickly acquired a symbolic status as a feminist icon, martyr, and poster child for rape and violence toward women, which had nothing to do with who she was as an actual person.
And sometimes that's the way it happens, but people need an icon, you know.
Yes. That is the story of the murder of Mia Zapata.
Yeah, that's good. That's crazy how that happens. Something tragic like that happens to a rock star or somebody, and then they turn it
because stranger attacks are actually kind of rare.
Yeah,
it's usually somebody you know.
Yeah.
So,
and just in general, it just reiterates the point of, especially back then, you just couldn't be a woman and go anywhere by yourself at night, especially that late at night.
Well, if I can remember all the times that I walked alone home from a bar, I mean, that's so scary.
You're so lucky.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, and she was a tough cookie, so.
I just remember being in college and girls wanting to go home by themselves and like, you cannot.
Yeah.
Because there's a million people just waiting to rape everyone outside.
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of world we live in?
I know. It is. It's sad.
That's a great way to end this podcast. We'll all just be sad until
and cry
the next
and
episode.
Everything.
But the next episode is 94 when I graduate high school, so I'm getting a little bit older.
So you're going to be getting some trim.
I'll be getting trim and more trim. I got plenty of trim in the 90s, baby.
I know. All right.
Anyway, I like you. That was a good story. That was good.
Was that all right?
Exciting. Yeah, I didn't put anything about a rock star. It was kind of cool.
Well, maybe we can play some of her music or something.
Yeah.
During
Well,
the
I
thing.
don't think we can.
Oh, we can't.
It's like
copyrights.
Maybe I'll do some karaoke versions,
Yeah.
which is probably not okay either.
I don't know.
Anyway, is there anything else we forgot about 93?
I think that is it. I think it's time to get out of here, Chuck Berry.
Get out of here, Chuck Berry. Stupid Jeff Barton graduated in 93, and he's got a skinny head. Actually, the class of 93 of my high school,
they all had skinny heads.
No, a lot of those people are dead. That's something we should talk about.
Well, we don't need to talk about it.
More than normal. Anyway, this has been American Timelines, episode
4, 1993.
Get the fuck out of here, Chuck Berry.
Get out of here, Chuck Berry.
Peace. popculture.us.
Music from the album Everybody's Got One by Matt Truman Ego Trip, available at Amazon.com.
Baby, won't you tell me it's your birthday?
Matt Truman Ego Trip is the greatest band of all time. Buy their music.